We have reached the second last weekend of the second last month of the 2025 baseball season, but still plenty of players entering the pool who could help your teams. Rookie call-ups, veterans returning from injury. We'll have it all here on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. And welcome, everybody, to the Saturday Fab edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, brought to you by Chalkboard. Erik Halterman here with Ryan Boyer. And Ryan, not many weeks left. We still got enough pickups, though. You've got enough to spend $1 every week on the 20th guy on our list the rest of the way.
It's basically coming down to that, yeah. But I guess if there's I don't know if you can call it a silver lining, but unfortunately at this time of the year, a lot of people are out of it. So a lot of people that have those fab dollars to spend are just not really paying attention. So sometimes you can sneak in some sneaky good buys this late in the year. But it's hard to plan around that, of course. So yeah, it's hopefully you have a couple fab dollars to rub together to get you that nice push to the finish line.
Yeah, pricing your fab bids this time of year is definitely difficult. As you mentioned, you might see some people in your league who have enough money to crush you on any bid, but are they moving on to football by now? Hard to say. Yeah. Speaking of money remaining, I just checked the money remaining in the TGFBI league that you and I are in together. We are both in the top 4 trying to chase down Justin Mason. I have $15 remaining out of a budget of $1,000. Ryan, you have 0. So I guess nothing we say today is going to apply to you in that league. I hope you used your $1,000 wisely and never need to pick up anybody the rest of the way, because you can't.
Yeah, I've mentioned on this podcast many times that I'm generally an aggressive fab bidder. Unfortunately, in that league, my pitching that's so bad? I can't even remember now. Either my pitching or my hitting is lackluster enough that I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. But yeah, you and I are kind of I'm trying to nip at your heels a little bit, and they're in 4th, but there's a little bit of a separation, unfortunately. So I think you're sitting pretty with your top 3 finish at least.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to chase down Justin, but there's time. It's possible. My $15 are going to have to go a long way there. But let's move on to some of the top headlines of the last couple days before we get into today's fab pickups. How about Joe Boyle? We've talked about him quite a lot throughout the season, and I guess we shouldn't have, because Joe Boyle optioned back to AAA Durham on Friday after giving up 15 earned runs across his last 3 starts, failed to go longer than 4 innings in any of those outings. Were we just completely wrong on Joe Boyle? I mean, it wasn't just us. People throughout the fantasy community were getting really excited for Joe Boyle and his 1.73 ERA and 0.97 whip at AAA, 5.40 ERA, 1.39 whip in 10 MLB outings. What happened there?
The downside of Joe Boyle, you're seeing it now. I mean, it's, as you mentioned, we talked about Joe Boyle a lot, and it's generally been in a positive light, but this is the downside you're seeing with a guy who's so volatile with his profile. And I watched that. They were playing the Cardinals his last start in my team, so I watched that game, and his command and control was just all over the place. I had no idea where the ball was going. The stuff still looked good. He was throwing hard, but that's just the bugaboo with him. And unfortunately, it's turned sour on Joe Boyle in a hurry. I would have liked to have seen him get a little more leash there. I mean, he pitched, once they finally did call him up, he pitched in the bullpen for a bit. I think he only got, 4 starts after moving in the rotation, something like that. But I mean, they were really bad starts, so I get it. What are the Rays going to do with that rotation spot? Wouldn't mind seeing Ian Seymour get a shot. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't think they've revealed their plans there yet. Also, Seymour's been pitching out of the bullpen, so I'm not sure how stretched out he is exactly. So, but also anytime and any pitcher in that ballpark is pretty scary. So it's basically you're leaning more towards streamers with those starters in a lot of situations anyway. But well, yeah, we'll see. Joe Boyle, obviously a drop. Don't know if he's going to get another opportunity again this season. Might just be destined for the bullpen over the long haul. But yeah, obviously a disappointment ultimately for those who were holding out hope that he could turn into something this season.
Yeah, Joe Boyle managed to cut his walk rate by 5 percentage points compared to last season, and his walk rate is still 13%. So sometimes guys just have too far to go. I mean, that we can say, the Rays improved pitchers. They did. It just wasn't enough with Joe Boyle. Real quick, Ian Seymour, who you mentioned, has thrown at least 3 innings in each of his last 2 relief appearances. So more or less stretched out to potentially have a chance to start, although he did give up 6 runs in 3 innings against the Yankees his last time out. More headlines to talk about here. Sticking in the AL East, we had Jordan Westburg finally hitting the IL after dealing with ankle discomfort since Monday. He finally hit the IL yesterday. Just another blow in a difficult season for Westburg, although he does have a 799 OPS. He hasn't actually been that bad when he's been out there. It's just only 73 games played at this point. Ankle sprain with 5.5 weeks left. Do you hold on to Jordan Westburg? Is there enough upside over the final 2-3 weeks? I mean, an ankle sprain isn't necessarily, especially one that he took 5 days to actually hit the IL with. I don't think this was the very severe high ankle sprain, keep you out for several months kind of deal. We hold on to Jordan Westburg?
If you can, sure. It's one of those situations where if you have the roster spot, absolutely go ahead and stick with him. But I don't, we're talking about August 23rd, August 25th for the upcoming week. You have to set your lineup. It's you're running out of time. You don't know exactly how long it's gonna linger for him. As you mentioned, he has been good when he's been healthy. Really been bitten hard by the injury bug, and it seems like mostly fluky stuff. So I could present it was kind of fluky last season too when he was injured as well. Could present a buying opportunity for next year for Jordan Westburg. I still think he's a good hitter. The cost probably going to be a little less in 2026 for him, I would guess. But yeah, I don't think I'm going out of my way to reserve a roster spot for him rest of season.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm picking up Luis Vazquez, who will be picking up some playing time in his absence either. But I think what you mentioned about Westburg for next year could be a value play. I think it's tricky, these guys who get hurt a lot, but not in the same way. After a certain point, you say, all right, he just gets hurt a lot. I feel like Corey Seager might be one of those guys who there were several years where I thought, okay, but these injuries aren't related. He's going to be fine. We're going to get the healthy season next year. He's a great value. And then there was just always something. But, that's not always the case. Sometimes guys have a run of 3 or 4 random injuries, and they were random. So definitely potential value next season, or potentially another frustrating year. One more bit of news, or I guess I should say it's 2 bits of news. We had a pair of late inning relievers for the Dodgers returning from the IL. Tanner Scott was activated yesterday. Kirby Yates will be activated today. Both of them potentially interesting pickups in a lot of leagues, I would imagine. If they were dropped, Tanner Scott probably has been held on to more places and would be the priority among those 2. It's still the Dodgers bullpen, though, so we expect them to spread saves around. But what would you be doing with these 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think Scott is the priority, as you mentioned. But I mean, you just look at the Dodgers schedule and the saves breakdown since those 2 guys have been hurt. Yates got that save in Scott's place back on July 21st, and then they've been Kasperius got a save, Jack Dreyer got a save, Alex Vesia got a save, Wrobleski got I believe that was probably a 3-inning save. Kasperius again, then back to Dreyer. It's just been mix and match. I expect that will continue. If you're putting a number on it, I would say maybe Tanner Scott gets 70% of their saves the rest of the way. That's probably optimistic. But how many does that break down to? It's just not going to be that many. But yeah, he would be my priority. I think Yates is an ad in a deeper league if he was dropped. But yeah, it's kind of a messy situation with the Dodgers. Don't know exactly what they're gonna do there, but Scott is the priority, I think, as long as that elbow holds up.
Yeah, it's a mess for the Dodgers, who do still have plenty of injuries, although they are starting to get healthier at the right time, especially on the pitching staff with Yates back. I mean, they're still missing Michael Kopech, Brock Stewart, but they've got plenty of high leverage arms. Their rotation is in the best state it's been all year. Yamamoto, Ohtani, Glasnow, Snell, Kershaw, even Emmett Sheehan, all healthy. This is kind of vaguely going to plan, it seems like, for the Dodgers. We are going to stick with the plan here and move on to our priority ads of the week, starting with an exciting rookie. Who you got, Ryan?
Yeah, this is kind of the free square this week, I guess. Samuel Basallo should have been available in some leagues last week. I think he was called up Sunday. Was he available? I was not available in NFC leagues, though. And I think he's still sitting around a little below 30% rostership in Yahoo leagues. So still available in a lot of leagues, fresh off that 8-year, $67 million extension just signed with the Orioles. One of the top prospects in baseball. He's number 6 on James Anderson's top 400. Number 65 on James's dynasty list, sitting right in between the aforementioned Corey Seager as well as Tyler Soderstrom, giving you an idea how highly Basallo is regarded. Awesome season at AAA, 966 OPS, 23 home runs in just 76 games. Walk rate all the way up at 13.7%. Keep in mind, he also did that as a 20-year-old. He just turned 21, making those numbers all the more impressive. That also means when you're that young, we don't know if they're going to hit the ground running exactly, but I mean, this is what a top power hitting prospect looks like. Samuel Basallo, he's a potential 40 homer bat. Don't know if he's going to stay at catcher, but he's the kind of guy that you do if you are fortunate enough to save up your fab dollars, which I mentioned I'm usually not that guy, but this is the guy you spend your money on. Adley Rutschman is out for a while with an oblique strain, maybe the season. That should ensure catcher eligibility next year for Basallo. Could pick up first base eligibility as well if he doesn't already have it. But yeah, young stud. Don't know if he's going to hit the ground running, but this is a guy that's definitely must roster across all fantasy leagues.
Yeah, just one of the best bats in the entire minors, and that was as a 20-year-old at AAA, a 20-year-old catcher. And that bat is very exciting. I see in the chat here a comment, bye-bye Weeders 2.0, Adley Rutschman. I've seen the sentiment around that this Basallo extension implies bad things for Adley Rutschman, or at least implies that the Orioles might be giving up on him. I don't see it that way at all. I think that Basallo is probably not going to be a catcher for very long. I see this extension as an endorsement of, yeah, we think this guy's bat is good enough that we see him being part of the team for the next 8 years, even though we have Adley Rutschman. I mean, maybe they know more about Rutschman's situation than we do, and they don't think he's ever going to get back to being the hitter he used to be. But I don't see it that way. I think that there's a world in which these two can coexist, because Basallo's bat is going to be good enough for him to be primarily a DH/first baseman. Now, is he going to be that right away? I don't know, but I would still throw quite a bit of my remaining budget at him if I needed a catcher, because I think the bat is that good. I'm going to talk about Basayo's teammate, Dylan Beavers, who we did mention, I believe, in the intro last week. He had just gotten called up. Nowhere near the same tier of prospect as Dylan Beavers, but he is a real prospect. And importantly, the playing time definitely is there for the number 104 prospect on James's top 400 here. Beavers called up last Saturday, has started every single game at either left field or right field, and he's hit the ground running in a way that convinces me he deserves to be in this priority ad section. I think I would be looking his way even in shallower leagues. Beaver's main skill, I might say, in the minors would be plate discipline. Is that fair? In 94 AAA games this season, 18% strikeout rate combined with a 16% walk rate. Love to see that. Also 18 homers, 23 steals. So he's got both the real life important skill of, walking almost as often as he strikes out, and the fantasy skills of giving you that category juice in the power and speed. Now, I'm not sure how good the power is. The hard hit rate of 39.5% wasn't amazing. It's right in line with what he's done so far, but he does have one homer in his first 6 games, and he has just as many walks as strikeouts. This is a guy who's hitting the ground running, getting the opportunity to play every day, should be able to steal you some bases, even if he hasn't attempted to steal yet. I mean, this is, even though the prospect pedigree isn't on the same level as Basayo, this looks like somebody who is going to help right away down the stretch.
Yeah, Basayo, the more exciting bat of the two, but it's possible Beavers could offer a more well-rounded skill set down the stretch. Also much older, so maybe he's got a better chance of hitting the ground running, as you mentioned. It's typically a good sign when you start hitting the ball harder and better your plate discipline at the same time at the AAA level, and that earned Beavers the call up, and he's looked good in the early going as well. My next guy, Joe G mentioned our first comment in the chat, Beatty with the fire emoji, and he is indeed going to be my next recommendation. Added him before a 4-hit game last night, by the way, but he did have that first career 4-hit game on Friday. In August, he's been ridiculous, 378, 440, 667 with 4 home runs. He has started each of the last 6 games for the Mets. That includes 2 against lefties, and he's been in the lineup for 10 of the last 11 contests. It's kind of been a Beatty and Mark Vientos and Ronnie Mauricio have kind of been in a quasi platoon, bouncing around to different positions and different spots in the lineup. And Beatty certainly looks like the top of the heap out of those 3 guys as far as priority playing time goes. A lot of that's because his glove has been so good this season, but he's also turning around with the bat as well. Jeff McNeil is also banged up, so that should enhance his playing time outlook as well. He's also hit the ball hard this year. That's a full season thing, not just recently. He's 47.8% hard hit rate, barrel rate all the way up at 13.2%. I think that's basically twice as much as it was for his career coming into the season. He's shown that max exit velo all the way up in the 96th percentile. So maybe this is just kind of I guess it would be post-type sleeper breakout with Beatty. He's been kind of middling for much of the season, but really turning it around of late. And I think he should be rostered basically everywhere. Also offers eligibility both at second base and third base. So that's handy to have as well.
Yeah, I think we talked early in this year about how this was the year to give Brett Beatty one more chance. And it looked like he was maybe going to lose this chance as well, but he has gotten there. I think at this point, we say Brett Beatty looks like he's going to have a pretty decent MLB career ahead of him. Got the strikeouts down, got the power up. It looks like this is going to work for Brett Beatty. My next guy on the list here is Pavin Smith of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Smith just returned at the start of this week from a 6-week absence due to an oblique strain. And with the Diamondbacks selling off at the deadline, shouldn't be hard for him to get plenty of playing time down the stretch. I doubt he's going to start against lefties, though, which does mean, even though I'm putting him in the priority ads section, if you're in a particularly shallow league, you could probably do better than a platoon first base / outfielder. But remember, back early in the season, Smith was off to a very exciting start. We were talking about him next to the legs of Jonathan Aranda and Tyler Soderstrom and Spencer Torkelson. I think Smith is not quite on that level, but he's a solid bat who gives you good power numbers. 46% hard hit rate, 12% barrel rate this year. It was 44 and 15 last year. The strikeouts are up compared to last season, though, which is a worry. He's not going to keep hitting 254 while striking out over 30% of the time, but I also expect that strikeout rate to go down. He's at 22.5% for his career, was at 20% the last couple seasons. Smith hasn't really done much this week since returning, but he is batting fifth, close enough to the heart of the order against righties. I think give him a few more games to get back in the groove, and we'll probably see something close to the Pavin Smith we saw earlier in the season when he was looking like quite a useful bat for more formats than I would have expected. So in the priority ad section, but maybe only barely, but go grab Pavin Smith if he's been dropped, and a good platoon first baseman is good enough in your league. You've got a more exciting, but also probably lower floor name to round out our priority hitters. Who you got?
Yeah, Carson Williams, 2 hits, including a home run in his major league debut on Friday. It hasn't been a great offensive season for Williams at the AAA level, just 213, 318, 447 with a 34.1% strikeout rate at AAA Durham. That's the bad. The good is he also hit 23 home runs, stole 22 bases. A year ago in the minors, 20 home runs, 33 stolen bases, just 1 home run away from 4 straight 2020 seasons in the minors. He's also got pretty favorable upcoming schedule. The Rays actually have a odd off day on a Saturday today. The perils of playing in a minor league ballpark. I think it's because they share a parking lot with the Bucks, and they have a preseason game, so they have an odd off day on a Saturday. But back in action.
Preseason football beats regular season baseball. Boo.
Yeah.
I guess we already knew that, though.
So he's got one more game at home tomorrow to round out their homestand. Then he goes at Cleveland, at Washington, then back for 7 at home, then goes at the White Sox, at the Cubs, and then back home for 7 again. So pretty favorable upcoming schedule. And the guys that have that kind of strikeout rate at the AAA level, generally that doesn't translate, at least not right away at the major league level. Colson Montgomery's kind of bucking that trend right now. He's gotten off to a good start, and we've seen guys do it before in the past. Joey Gallo, of course, put together a nice run there. Miguel Sano, certainly different profiles from Carson Williams. But maybe it's a low average guy who can still chip in with the power, especially at that ballpark, and the stolen bases. As you mentioned, the floor is pretty low with Carson Williams, but I think especially in your deeper leagues and some of your shallower leagues as well, if you're looking for that potentially to catch lightning in a bottle, he's worth a pickup just to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I got to admit to being quite scared of that strikeout rate. That might turn me away from picking him up, but I might miss out on a player who could really help in some other categories. So particularly if you're in a spot where what you need is homers and steals and you've got a great batting average, or I guess if your batting average is so bad, you're not going to pick up points anyway. Basically, if you can afford to de-emphasize batting average over the final 5 weeks, then I would be much more interested in Carson
Should mention
Williams,
too, real quickly, that he's got an elite glove as well, so he could get off to a slow start and still potentially remain in that lineup as long as Ha-Seong Kim, who's had more injury bad luck than Jordan Westberg, remains out.
Yeah, is he Taylor Walls, but actually can help you in a couple fantasy categories, maybe that's potentially what we're looking at with Carson Williams. Could be pretty interesting. But let's move over to the priority pitchers, starting with Shane Bieber, who finally got back on a major league mound yesterday and was excellent in his return from Tommy John surgery. Picked up the win against the Marlins, 1 run on 2 hits and no walks, 9 strikeouts in 6 innings. We talk a lot about how, hey, these pitchers, right, when they're coming back from Tommy John surgery, don't necessarily trust their first few starts. It can take 6 weeks. It can take a year until they get back to being the guy we thought they were going to be. But, it can also take no time at all sometimes, I guess, in the case of Shane Bieber, who very much looked like himself. The velocity isn't particularly high, but remember, the velocity doesn't tend to be all that high from Shane Bieber. 92.5 on the fastball. That's down almost 2 ticks from where he was in that Cy Young winning 2020 season. He was at 94.3 on his fastball, but from 21 through 24, he averaged about 92, is it? It was closer to 93 in 21 and then about 91 and a half since then. So he's up about a tick over where he's been the last few years before injury. So that's pretty encouraging. Shane Bieber has not needed elite velocity to be very, very good. I wouldn't expect him to have that 1.63 ERA and 0.87 whip he had back in 2020. Man, he finished the year with a 41% strikeout rate. Easier to do when a year is only 2 months, but still, that was the heights Shane Bieber once was able to achieve. I would not be expecting a return to that level again, but a return to being a very competent pitcher who can absolutely help you out down the stretch. I should mention Shane Bieber has been stashed in leagues where you can pick up guys while they're still injured. This is a former Cy Young winner we're talking about, and somebody who has looked like he was on the threshold of a return for a while. You might remember he actually had a setback during his rehab. He could have been back maybe a month or 2 ago. That setback seems to be well in the rearview mirror at this point, and he is entering the player pool in NFBC contests this weekend. And he's going to take most of your remaining budget, I would imagine. We have not been giving budget recommendations the last few weeks for these priority ads because you probably don't have much budget left, and it really just depends on how the budget situation looks in your league. But I gotta imagine, Ryan, you're spending all 0 of your remaining dollars on Shane Bieber, and I should spend all 15 of mine, right?
Yeah, blowing out that fab budget for Shane Bieber. Yeah, I mean, he looked phenomenal last night. Pretty similar to his, not quite the velocity as you mentioned during his Cy Young campaign, but really looked fantastic. He looked good on his rehab assignment too. He had a 37-3 strikeout to walk rate over 29 innings on his rehab assignment. So it's basically just a continuation of that. I mean, command is often the thing that comes back last for people coming back from Tommy John, but it certainly does not look to be the case with Shane Bieber right now, and he's definitely a must roster across all formats. Don't know if this guy's must roster, but he's getting fairly close to it. Cam Schlittler, quite an outing his last time out, perfect through 6 innings, and that was at Tampa Bay, tough hitting environment. You look over his last 21 2/3 innings, he's got a 2.08 ERA, 0.97 whip, 23 strikeouts, and 7 walks. The walk rate for the season is at 10.5%, a little higher than you'd like. Walks were an issue for him at times in the minors as well. But the stuff is fantastic. He's averaging 98 miles per hour, just under it with his 4-seamer. Got an above average ground ball rate. Also has a favorable schedule next week. He's versus the Nationals and then at the White Sox for a 2-start week. So good time to be picking up Cam Schlittler. I mean, I guess the Yankees have Ryan Yarbrough on the way back, he's pitched well when given a chance in their rotation, but I just can't imagine that Cam Schlittler is going to lose that rotation job. I mean, maybe if they're thinking that he's going to wind up in the bullpen for the playoffs, they might go ahead and make that transition now. That's possible, but he also could be like their number 2 or 3 starter in the rotation for the playoffs potentially. So I think he's going to remain in the rotation. Would like to see the walk rate go down a little bit, but the upside with Cam Schlittler is immense, and he's off to a good start.
Yeah, definitely see something there with Cam Schlittler. I am going to go to Bubba Chandler, who I think we have to talk about in this section, but we don't have to give a ringing endorsement for picking up Bubba Chandler, who is not currently in the Pirates rotation. But this is a top 20 prospect in baseball still, despite a disappointing year. He's still 19 on James's top 400 here at RotoWire. And he just threw 4 scoreless innings and picked up a save in his MLB debut, as we all predicted at the start of the season. Bubba Chandler, a source of saves. Now, I don't think he's going to get any more saves. This was the 3-inning variety. Really, it was the 4-inning variety. Starter Braxton Ashcraft went 5 innings, and then Bubba Chandler finished it off with 4. The most notable thing about those 4 innings, I guess you could say, it's the 0 runs or the 2 hits, but to me, it's the 0 walks. Now, he did hit a batter, so maybe we shouldn't be quite as excited, but Bubba Chandler was not showing great control in the minors. That was one of the main problems. His whip was all the way up to 148, thanks in large part to a 12% walk rate in his 24 starts. Just 3 strikeouts in his MLB debut, too. So we can't really say this was an amazing outing, but if he's going to not walk nearly as many batters, maybe we can draw a narrative where, as people were suspecting, was this guy just getting kind of bored and frustrated in the minors because he thought he should be up like we all did. I mean, this is the guy who actually made 7 AAA starts last year and had a 1.83 ERA in those starts. For most organizations, that alone would have gotten him into the majors to start this year. Instead, Chandler looked great at the start of the season, and then right around the time where the Pirates were going to call him up, theoretically, after stealing that extra year of team control, things started to go downhill. I think you can draw a narrative here that this guy was just frustrated in the minors and is going to be looking much more like he was supposed to in the majors. Now, that's all wishful thinking, as is the idea that he'll move back into the rotation soon. But if you're in a spot where you have the luxury to add a player to your bench, I think Bubba Chandler has to be a top priority there because, look, are they really going to keep him in the bullpen for the remainder of the season if he has another good outing or 2? Maybe, but I just don't think that sets them up very well for next season. They got to be planning on having this guy as one of their starters for not just next year, but, the next 5-6 years. I think that if you can afford to add a guy to the bench, you add Bubba Chandler and you hope he's starting in a week or 2 and he gives you some good performances in September. I mean, do you still see that as a legitimate possibility despite the way his first 5 months have gone?
Yeah, certainly a up and down performance at AAA, but we don't know, as you mentioned, why necessarily that is the case. Could have been just frustrated that he hadn't been called up. The tricky thing is I don't know that we're going to know how he's going to be used when we have to set our lineups. We might not find out until like that day. I mean, if they keep him on the same kind of schedule as piggybacking with Braxton Ashcraft, that would put him starting again next Wednesday in St. Louis. That's a pretty favorable setup. Cardinals offense has been pretty bad for the last couple months. Week after that, though, it would be against the Dodgers and the Brewers. That's pretty scary. But yeah, it's just tough predicting how he's going to be used, and I don't know that we're going to know ahead of time how he's going to be used. But yeah, as you mentioned, if the league size is right, if your situation is right, it's still a guy that you definitely want to roster because the talent is just immense. I mean, he averaged 98.4 miles per hour with his fastball last night.
Yeah.
The stuff just looked great. The roll up in the air, But I think if you can afford to do so, you should still be looking to roster Bubba Chandler.
All right. Before your next name, I do want to throw in one from the chat here because it was a guy you mentioned in passing already this show. A question from Luis, who said he picked up, I assume this is Miguel Vargas, when Colson Montgomery went down, but now Montgomery's back and hit a homer last night. Would you add Colson Montgomery back? I wanted to get him in here because I think that when Montgomery was called up, we said, no, we don't want this guy at all. Strikes out too much, doesn't really do anything else. And he has performed, only hitting 221, but 11 homers in 40 games. Do you think Colson Montgomery, now that he's back, is an option we probably should have talked about by now in one of these priority ad sections?
Yeah, I feel like we just mentioned him in passing, even as a deep league addition.
Right.
Because that's how, I mean, he was sent to the complex league earlier this season to get his swing right. That's how bad he looked at AAA. But maybe he's figured something out. I tend to think he's going to come crashing down pretty hard sooner rather than later. But it's not very high level fantasy advice, but just like ride the hot wave while you can. Maybe he keeps it up for a few more months, a few more weeks. The talent is certainly there. Just can he make enough contact? I'm not optimistic over the long haul, but if you have the roster space and a need in the middle infield, I think he's worth a shot.
Fair enough. Worth a shot, I think, is a good way to put it. I wouldn't add him with confidence. We're also getting some Mick Abel questions in the chat. Don't worry, we will get to Mick Abel, but the fact that we haven't gotten to him yet might indicate the sorts of things we'll be saying about him. But let's go back to you for our final couple priority pitchers.
Yeah, how badly do you need saves? Because Victor Vodnik of the Colorado Rockies has picked up 4 of them over his last 5 appearances. He's also given up just 1 base runner over that time with a 7-0 strikeout to walk rate. 4 or 5 saves he's picked up for the Rockies since Seth Halverson went down. The only one he didn't get, he was unavailable. Juan Mejia got that save. Halverson doesn't look anywhere close to returning yet. Might not return at all for the end of the season. I mean, I get the downside here. Any Rockies reliever is just how good is he going to be and how many save opportunities are going to be there. I do think Victor Vodnik is pretty good, though. And he's been pitching well lately. So this really, it just boils down to how badly do you need saves and can you afford that roster spot? But if the situation is right for your particular roster, you need those saves. I think throwing a buck or two towards Victor Vodnik is a viable strategy.
Yeah, I don't want to recommend a Rockies closer ever, but like you said, if that's exactly the situation you're in, I would do it. I would add him ahead of Craig Kimbrell, who was mentioned in the chat here, has just been picked up by the Astros with Josh Hader out, with Bennett Sousa also now out. I would think I would just add Brian Abreu and nobody else if he was already picked up in your league. I don't think I'm messing with Craig Kimbrell, but maybe in a sufficiently deep format. I got one more priority pitcher for you, though, and that is Parker Messick of the Cleveland Guardians, a rookie who just made his debut this week and looked quite good. Parker Messick against the Arizona Diamondbacks. He went 6 2/3 innings, allowed 1 run on 7 hits, 1 walk while striking out 6. A pretty good outing for a guy who sits just outside the top 200 on the top 400 prospect rankings here at RotoWire. So a real prospect, definitely not a frontline prospect, but this guy was a 2nd-round pick in the draft back in 2022. Had good numbers in 20 AAA starts, a 3.47 ERA, a 29% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate at the AAA level this season wasn't great, although, again, he did only walk 1 in his first MLB start. This is not a guy that I think is going to, really change your fortunes in a major way, but he does have an opportunity ahead of him, at least in the short term and potentially the rest of the way if he pitches well. He's the number 5 right now. He's listed at 6th on the depth chart because John Means, remember him, is actually a member of the Cleveland organization and is working his way back from Tommy John surgery. He's made a couple rehab starts, so maybe if Messick gives you a couple bad turns in the rotation, he loses his spot. But, Stuff Plus liked his arsenal after just one outing, particularly liked the sinker in the changeup. That's, not something I'd pick up a guy just based on that, but it's good to see. So a decent prospect with a decent opportunity ahead of him. I think he could do a lot worse for these final 5 weeks here. But should we move on? Unless you've got anything to say on Parker Messick.
I was just going to mention, this isn't really fantasy related, but did you see his dad in the stands during his major league debut?
I didn't see that clip. No.
He was living and dying with every pitch that his
Nice.
son was throwing. It was pretty entertaining. I think his dad was maybe had a little too much caffeine, but it was he was standing up and making the umpire strikeout signals, and like he was very much into it. So look up that clip if you're inclined.
Nice. Love a good baseball dad. Let's move on to not quite our deep league ads just yet, because we've got this message and some picks to make from our sponsor, Chalkboard. Cash in on your MLB picks this season with Chalkboard. Simply choose more or less on your favorite player stats to win up to 5,000 times your money. For a limited time only, new players get $20 free with no deposit required. Yes, you heard that right. $20 free just on sign up. See why over 1 million fans have already locked in with Chalkboard to turn their sports knowledge into cold hard cash. Whether you're locking in the perfect slip with alternate lines using the cash out feature to take your money and run, or hammering the daily promos, today is your chance to win up to $40,000 on a single entry. Stop sitting on the sidelines and get into the game with Chalkboard Fantasy Sports, now available in 30 plus states. Download Chalkboard today and use promo code ROTOMLB, that's ROTOMLB, to get $20 free with no deposit required. And Ryan, let's make a few picks here, and maybe we can tie them in to our potential pickups. I know your first guy is one of those. Who you got?
Yeah, doubling up on Brett Beatty here. His over-under on total bases tonight is just 0.5. He is in Atlanta, good hitting weather, and he's going up against new Atlanta Brave Cal Quantrill, who had been just getting absolutely hammered with the Marlins the last few starts. And as I mentioned, Brett Beatty has been on fire in August. That's a really low, as low as it gets, prop for his total bases. Very favorable matchup. The runs scored implied total for the Mets for this one is high. Good hitting environment. Bad pitcher he's going up against. I like the over under for half a total base for Brett Beatty tonight.
All right. Yeah, I bet he gets either over or under and not exactly on a half there. Moving on to my first pick here, Aaron Nola. I would either take his less than 5.5 strikeouts or his less than 17.5 outs. And I know that he doesn't have a very tough matchup today against the Nationals. So I guess this is me saying I wouldn't start Aaron Nola in your league either. It's an uncomfortable position to be in because you probably drafted him as your second starter and probably waited a while to get him back. If you drafted him that early, you probably didn't drop him. Nola's had a tough season. He did not look good in the early part of the year and then hit the IL in mid-May with an ankle sprain, and then turned out he also had a stress reaction in his rib cage, showed up about a month later. He did look pretty good on rehab. I believe it was 17-3 strikeout to walk in 12 1/3 innings, but he was not good in his return to action, which was also against Washington. Allowed 6 runs on 7 hits, 1 walk, just 4 strikeouts in 2 1/3 innings. Basically, I just need to see one good start from Aaron Nola before I'm comfortable saying he's going to go 6 clean innings and get 6 strikeouts. And so, like I said, I might even not be starting him in daily moves leagues until we get that one good start. I mean, he shouldn't be done. He's only 32 years old, but .692 ERA, 160 WHIP on the season. I just need to see that good start before I have any confidence in Aaron Nola. Back to you for your number 2 pick.
Yeah, I've got another hitter. I'm going to take the under 0.5 total bases on Isaac Collins today. Been hitting a bit of a rough stretch, 2 for 26 at the plate over his last 8 games. He was moved down to the number 7 spot in the Brewers lineup yesterday, so fewer opportunities to reach that total base prop. Also got a really tough matchup against Logan Webb, who has been awesome this season. Don't know that the bubble is totally going to burst for Isaac Collins, but I think things are pointing against him tonight. Not a great matchup. He also just had a kid, so maybe he's a little sleepy. Maybe that's contributed to his downfall of late. But I'll take the under on the total base prop for Isaac Collins.
Betting against the dad strength there. All right, and I've got one final pick here. That is Andrew Abbott to go over 17.5 outs against the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that has a below average offense against lefties. Andrew Abbott has been a workhorse of late. His last 3 starts, 6 2/3, 7 2/3, and a clean 7 innings. All you need for him is to do 6 over 17.5 outs. That just seems too low. He's gone over this in 3 straight, in 6 of his last 7. It's been a remarkable year for Andrew Abbott. I don't think he's nearly as good as his 2.28 ERA, but I think he can give you a 6-inning quality start at the very least here. So thank you to Chalkboard. Let's move on to our deep league ads, starting on the mound. Who have you got, Ryan?
I've got Johan Oviedo, who, unlike Bubba Chandler, has a spot in the Pirates rotation. Looked really good his last start against the Blue Jays. 5 innings, 1 run, and 6 strikeouts. Pitched really well in his rehab assignment as well. 3.12 ERA, 36-7 strikeout to walk rate over 26 innings. That includes a 20-3 strikeout to walk rate over 13 2/3 innings in 3 AAA starts. The walks have been constantly an issue for Oviedo, so the improved control he's displayed on his rehab, don't know that I totally buy into that, but do think he could be potentially streamer worthy in good matchups, and he does have 2 starts next week. The first one is at the Cardinals against his old team. The second one is at Boston. A little scared of that one. If I could just start him for that first outing, I probably would. But I think there's probably enough there in your deeper formats that he would be worth streaming next week in a 2-start week. And Johan Oviedo coming off of that long layoff from Tommy John, and the stuff has always been there with him. Can he throw enough strikes? He's at least shown to this point that he has. Don't know if I totally buy into it, but I'm intrigued enough in deeper formats to give him a look.
Yeah, I can get behind Johan Oviedo as well. My first deep league pitcher here is a guy who we've had multiple questions about, Mick Abel. Now, a lot of these questions are, is he a good start today? Because he's being called up to face the White Sox. And man, if you're going to pick up Mick Abel at all, you should probably use him against the White Sox. And I guess by putting him on here, I'm saying you should pick him up in at least some leagues. Man, though, I don't know how much I can get behind Mick Abel. That's why I'm definitely putting him in the deep league section, even though the Twins liked him enough to acquire him as one of the 2 pieces they got back for Joan Duran, one of the top relievers in baseball who had multiple years of team control left. So theoretically, there could be something here for Mick Abel, who was the 15th overall pick back in 2020. Between the 2 organizations at the AAA level, has a 2.22 ERA in 16 starts, 29% strikeout rate. The walks are way down from where they were in previous seasons. Problem is, it's still a 10.5% walk rate. That's true both in the Phillies system and the Twins system. Again, he's posted good minor league numbers in his 3 starts since moving to the Twins, is striking out batters, but the walks are still there. The main reason I can't really get behind Mick Abel as anything other than a deep league punt is the fact that he was just a completely different guy in the majors outside of that first debut start. And it's pretty easy to see why. His velocity was way higher in that one outing. The velocity on his fastball in his debut, 97.3. The velocity on his fastball in his other 5 starts, 96.0. So almost a mile per hour and a half lower. And this happens to guys. We know that this happens. Guys get an adrenaline boost. They throw harder than they've thrown in their lives. It's kind of like a closer, right? Pitching in the one inning in a high excitement situation, guys can reach back and get a little bit extra. That happens in guys' debuts. Mick Abel was excellent in his major league debut. 9 strikeouts, no walks in 6 innings. Do you know Mick Abel's maximum number of strikeouts in a start after that debut?
3.
Exactly, 3. He never struck out more than 3 batters after that debut start. He was not good at all, did not look like he belonged in the majors, and pretty quickly worked his way back to the minors for the Phillies. He's going to get some runway down the stretch because the Twins want to see what they have in him. When you move to a new organization, they can adjust your pitch mix slightly and that, maybe adjust a grip here or there and get something more out of you. I have said before, when a pitcher changes organizations, that's reason enough to be at least somewhat interested. But all the reasons here to pick up Abel are, hey, he used to be good, or hey, he had that one good start. Hey, maybe they tweak something. There's just nothing actually solid to hold on to here. I'm pretty sure it's not going to work out, but I do still think he deserves a mention and is maybe worth picking up. I mean, if he looks really good against the White Sox, you definitely do pick him up. I just don't think I'd have the confidence to go grab him in a daily league and throw him out there, even against the White Sox yet. How about you?
Well, maybe he can have that velocity adrenaline boost in his first Twins start as well.
Does that work? Maybe.
I would be willing to stream him today. I don't think the downside is great enough against that lineup. But as you mentioned, there are potential red flags and with Mick Abel. So we'll see how things go today. But obviously the Twins thought very highly of him to acquire him in that trade for Duran. He's more of a, as you mentioned, a deep league ad, someone I would like to stash on my bench if I could and just see how it looks. Maybe that pitch mix is altered enough that he figures something out, but don't know that he's going to be able to throw enough strikes. Moving on to Ryan Gusto, my next recommendation. Had a quality start with 8 strikeouts in 6 innings in his first start with the Marlins. Came over from the Astros in that Jesus Sanchez trade. Didn't go as well yesterday against the Blue Jays. He did manage to cover 6 innings, but gave up 5 runs in that start. Actually didn't have a single strikeout either. Has an elevated 5.05 ERA so far at the major league level, but above average strikeout rate at 22.1%, just a 7.2% walk rate. Consistently missed at bat per inning in the minors, 3.70 ERA with 141 strikeouts, over 148 in the third innings last year at the AAA level. Got a favorable home park. Very little reason for the Marlins not to run him out there every 5th day, rest of season, just to see what he looks like. More of a streaming option, but I think there's enough there with Ryan Gusto that when the matchup looks good, he's worth throwing out there.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. My next pitcher here is 2 pitchers, or it's one of 2 pitchers, with Walker Buehler moving to the bullpen in Boston. There is a spot open for either Kyle Harrison or Richard Fitz. And as of right now, it's not clear exactly what's going on. We had the note that Fitz was getting called up to pitch in relief, but that news came Thursday, and I'm checking the timeline here. The report that Walker Buehler could move to the bullpen, that Fitz coming up was Wednesday, and then the report that Walker Buehler could move to the bullpen was Thursday. The initial report on Fitz is that he's coming up to pitch in relief. He hasn't pitched yet, and he's been exclusively a starter in the majors and the minors. So was that initial report just incorrect, or they've changed their mind now that Buehler's heading to the pen? Is it just going to be Richard Fitz, or is it going to be Kyle Harrison, who was acquired in the Rafael Devers trade and has been stuck in the minors ever since? Whoever it is, I think I do want in deep leagues. Neither of them are amazing, but Richard Fitz, the strikeouts 19% is a little bit too low in his 10 major league starts this season. But when you throw in a 7% walk rate and a slightly above average 44% ground ball rate, that's a good enough pitcher in deeper formats if he's got a team that can give him a decent shot at wins. Kyle Harrison at the big league level for the Giants was nothing special. 4.56 ERA. Did have a 25% strikeout rate, which is pretty good. 26% at the AAA level this season. So two pitchers who are kind of sort of something, neither of whom even has the job yet. Basically check back on this one tomorrow. But whoever does get it, I do think the fifth starter in Boston, I wish the park was better, but the team is good enough, and I do trust the staff there to tweak their pitchers and get the most out of them. He says 1 minute after explaining how Walker Buehler has been so bad that he hit the bullpen. But, I still do think that they can get the most out of most of their pitchers. Whichever guy, Richard Fitz or Kyle Harrison, grabs that fifth starter spot is going to be good enough for your deeper formats, I think. Can you get behind that?
Yeah, interesting timing on the demotion of Buehler to the bullpen, I thought. I hope it's going to be Kyle Harrison. He's looked good lately at AAA Worcester, 2.25 ERA, over a strikeout per inning over his last 4 starts there. It also sets up for potentially for a 2-start week and pretty decent matchups at Baltimore and at home against the Pirates. So keep an eye on news for that, what the Red Sox are going to do with that rotation spot. I prefer Harrison of the two. Interested to see what that pitch mix change is going to look like for him at the big league level. Not wild about this next recommendation, but he's pitched surprisingly well, as you know, as a Phillies fan. But Taijuan Walker, 2.28 ERA, 106 WHIP in 4 August starts. 8 starts since rejoining the Phillies rotation. He's got a 3.19 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP. The downside here, 24 strikeouts and 42 in a third innings over that time. He's just not missing bats at all. But he's pitching deep enough into games. He's been good enough from a run prevention perspective that, especially with that Phillies offense backing him, that I think he's worth scooping back up in deeper formats with the uncertainty of Zach Wheeler, unfortunately, having that surgery to remove that blood clot. We just don't know when or if he's going to come back rest of season. So I think there's a pretty decent chance Walker hangs on to that 5th spot rest of season for the Phillies. And it's a low upside play, but particularly from a wins perspective, I think he's worth a look in deeper formats.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I think it is the Wheeler injury news that makes Walker good enough to pick up, because I think his spot is basically safe unless Andrew Painter knocks the door down in a way that he hasn't done through the first 5 months this year, with Mick Abel out the door as well, now a Twin. I think it's just Walker's job. The low strikeouts are a problem, both because strikeouts are a category in most leagues and because they make him harder to trust. But he's only given up more than 3 runs in 3 of his outings this year. So that's pretty encouraging. If he's not missing bats, he's at least missing barrels. So a decent enough option down the stretch here is Taijuan Walker. And we'll move over to our deep league ads right after this message from the NFFC. The NFFC RotoWire Fantasy Football Online Championship is live. Play fantasy football against your favorite RotoWire experts on NFFC this football season. Jeff Erickson, Nick Whalen, and more will compete in the RotoWire NFFC Online Championship for a shot at $250,000. Sign up for a draft today at rotowire.com/high stakes. That's rotowire.com/high stakes. And we're back here with our deep league hitter ads. I'm going to kick things off with Jostinson Garcia. I believe that is a decent enough attempt to pronounce his name for the first time.
The password.
The password, as they call him. People who don't try to pronounce long names with Y's and X's and J's in them, but Joe Stinson is how Baseball Reference is telling us to pronounce it. And I think there's a decent chance that we're all going to get to know how to pronounce Joe Stinson Garcia's name this season. Outfielder for the Red Sox, who at least has a short-term opportunity with Wilyer Abreu on the IL. I think I'm limiting Garcia to more of a deep league pickup because not a ton of playing time necessarily right away. And there's a chance that the playing time evaporates, of course. But a pretty interesting prospect here. Garcia on the top 100 here at RotoWire. He actually ranks 85th, which suggests that if he's actually given a proper run out, there could really be something. In 99 AAA games, Garcia has 20 homers, 6 steals, a 289 average. He's had that's 99 games between the top 2 levels, I should say. He's had minor strikeout concerns show up at the AAA level. His strikeout rate was just 21% at AA, just 19% last year, but it's up to 27.5 at AAA, which is worrisome. Suggests that we're probably not going to get a particularly high average at the big league level, but there's some pretty good power here. Not a lot of speed, but there is some speed. Playing time in a good park for a good lineup. I think there's enough. It's just the question is he going to get much opportunity against righties? He is a right-handed bat. He started yesterday against a lefty. If there was more obvious playing time down the stretch here, Garcia would be one of the more exciting call-ups of these final 6 weeks. Just not quite there, but the talent is good enough that I want to add him and see what happens. Can you get behind that?
Yeah, not in there today against a righty, Garcia. It's the playing time that worries me. If he does play enough, there's an interesting enough skill set to pick him up. But I don't know if the playing time is going to be there. Even with Wilyer Abreu out, there's still a lot of mouths to feed there. I'm going to stick with the Red Sox, though. Another guy that I'm not certain is going to be playing regularly, but he has started 2 straight games against righties since that Wilyer Abreu injury. That's David Hamilton. Started Thursday and reached base 3 times and stole a base. And of course, it's stolen bases. Basically, the only reason why you want to roster David Hamilton. He's managed to steal 18 and 148 plate appearances in 2025, and that's with a just terrible batting line. Last year, 33 steals over just 317 plate appearances. So he's gonna run anytime he gets on base. What are the Red Sox gonna do with Ceddanne Rafaela with Abreu out? Is he gonna play more in the outfield? I don't know if have you seen the splits with Rafaela as far as when he's starting in the outfield versus when he's starting at second base?
I've seen that he's been terrible at second base. I don't know if that means anything, but it is true.
Yeah, 789 OPS as a center fielder, 325 OPS as a second baseman. Does that mean anything? I mean, if you're focusing more on your defense, if your preparation changes as position change, it could mean something, maybe not, but maybe they prefer to keep him in the outfield. And if they do, at least against righties, that means more reps for David Hamilton. And not a great hitter, not a great player generally, but when he gets on base, he steals bases. So this is specifically a deep league play for those who need stolen bases. But if that fits you, then David Hamilton's worth a look.
All right. Well, my first deep league hitter was a potentially exciting one who might not have playing time. So I'm going to make up for it by giving you a couple names to close the show who are definitely not exciting, but do have playing time. The first here is Casey Schmidt, who missed a few days last weekend after getting hit in the arm, but has been back and looks fine and is eligible at, I believe, first base, second base, and third base in most leagues. So a good end of the roster player. Casey Schmidt in 66 games, hitting 244, 8 homers, no steals. The fantasy juice there between the power and speed, not great, but look under the hood just a little bit. I mean, if I told you there's a player who's playing every day, who's got a 23% strikeout rate, which is only a hair worse than league average, and a 45% hard hit rate, which is a few points better than league average, I mean, that's a pretty decent bat. If you get that kind of bat playing every day, you wish there was speed, but he's been hitting 3, 4, 5 in the order over the past couple of weeks. So a guy who makes an average amount of contact and hits the ball harder than average and is eligible at 3 different spots in the infield while playing every day, he's fine. He's nothing special, but he's fine. I see a mention here of the fact that he's right-handed. The thing about being right-handed means if you're righty and good enough to start against lefties, then you get to start every day. For these, there are advantages to both, right? A lefty, if you're talking about a guy who's bad enough that he's definitely going to be platooned either way, then you want him to be left-handed because then he gets the large side of the platoon. But if he's good enough that they're going to play him against same-sided pitching, then it's fine to be right-handed because it's easier to play every day. So particularly if you're scrounging around for playing time, yeah, there definitely is a downside that a player like him falls into the short side of the platoon. That doesn't seem to be the case right now. I think the appeal for Schmidt right now almost requires him to be right-handed because that's what is keeping him out of a platoon. Not exciting, but decent power, decent contact, and lots of playing time. That's good enough for me in a deeper format. You got one more deep league name?
I do. Jacob Melton of the Astros. He started 6 of the last 8 versus right-handed pitchers in center field. The 2 he didn't start, Taylor Trammell started those, and he is now hurt. Jake Myers doesn't look like he's coming back anytime soon. Unfortunate part is Jacob Melton has done very little with his playing time so far. 426 OPS, a 38.7% strikeout rate. Obviously, if that continues, he's just not going to be worth rostering, not going to be worth playing. But this is a prospect of some note. 2 years ago in the minors, he hit 23 home runs and stole 46 bases. Last year in the minors, 15 home runs and 30 stolen bases. He's one of the more well-regarded hitting prospects in the Astros system. Has shown very little, again, at the major league level, but there is a potentially interesting blend of power and speed here with Jacob Melton, and at least in the short term, he should get regular reps against right-handed pitching. So in your deeper formats, that's enough to roll the dice on him.
All right. I've got a couple names from the chat here to go to before I give you my final name. We got a question. Would you drop Erik Lauer now, or would you hold off? I mean, Erik Lauer has been shockingly impressive this season, but just moved to the pen with the return of Shane Bieber. I mean, if you're holding on to him, you're basically just assuming one of the Blue Jays 5 starters is going to get injured ahead of him. I mean, or you're holding on to him to use him in long relief. It's a tough to cut a guy who's got, what is his numbers now? A 2.76 ERA, a 1.08 whip. That's a tough cut. But you have to tell yourself a story of how he's even going to be started again in your lineup. And I think that's hard to do.
Schneider did indicate that he'll probably still see some starts down the stretch.
Okay.
Don't know when that will come or against who. But I don't know. Even as good as he's been, I don't know with the uncertainty there about role if Erik Lauer is worth hanging on to in hopes that he does get, 2 or 3 more starts down the stretch. I'm just not sure if that's worth it.
All right. We also had a mention of Owen Casey, who we talked about last week when he was just been called up. We weren't sure about the playing time. He did have 4 starts in a row earlier this week, but some of that was while Kyle Tucker was sitting. He's now been back on the bench for a couple games in a row. So deep league only, but maybe still interested in Owen Casey. And then finally, we had a question about Jeremiah Jackson, who is getting plenty of playing time for the Orioles. Is there anything there with Jeremiah Jackson? Does he deserve deep league attention? Does have a 115 WRC plus, is hitting 327 in 17 games, but there's a 429 BABIP behind it. league average strikeout rate of 23% doesn't suggest to be. He's going to be a batting average asset moving forward. Is there anything here with Jeremiah Jackson?
I suppose in a deep enough league. I mean, he's hit well in the minors this season. 879 OPS, 15 home runs, and 11 stolen bases. Unfortunately, he also was just absolutely atrocious in the minors last year at the AA level, but still a pretty young guy and is getting an opportunity. So, I mean, I think you can talk yourself into it in a deep enough league, but I'm not super excited about him.
All right, and I will give you my final name here, who we will round out the not super excited club, and that is Nacho Alvarez of Atlanta, who I mentioned because we now have the news that Austin Riley done for the year. Nacho Alvarez has been the guy getting the starts at third base in Atlanta. Hasn't done a lot with them, but in deeper leagues, playing time matters. And the thing about Atlanta is they do not mix and match. They just give you the job, even if you're Nacho Alvarez. He's made 11 straight starts. He started 5 of the first 7 after Riley went down. When Riley missed time earlier in the season, he got every single start. He doesn't do a lot with them, again, but 94 WRC plus isn't that much worse than average. No homers or steals yet in 25 games is the real problem here. 259 batting average is fine, but he'll give you some runs and RBI because he'll be in there every single game. Whereas similar players like, the Owen Caseys of the world who have some upside, they might get 2-3 starts a week. So if you're in those deeper formats, playing time matters just so much. And Nacho Alvarez is going to get probably more of it than he deserves. So I guess I'd go get Nacho Alvarez. If you need a third baseman, I believe he's eligible at second as well. So a fine end of the roster guy, right? Even those NFBC leagues where you can pull out your platoon guys over the weekend if they're facing 2 lefties. Alvarez is going to be able to slide in at middle or corner, and he's always going to start, it seems like it. So I guess Nacho Alvarez, a fine option to round out your roster.
He's actually hit some lately too. 982 OPS over his last 6 games. He's got a couple back-to-back multi-hit games. I mean, I think in the minors, he's always been a really good plate discipline guy. And he's still only 22, so maybe that'll eventually translate at the major league level. But as you mentioned, even if that does translate, there's just not much power or speed to speak of. So it's a perfect fit for a deep league play where you just need somebody who gets those reps, but there's not a lot of upside at all there.
All right. Well, a nice, bright, happy note to end the show on. Thank you, everybody who hung out in the chat. We had a busy one today. We're sorry we couldn't get to all of the names, but hope we got to most of them. Thanks to our sponsors, Chalkboard and the NFFC. And the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast will be back tomorrow. Scott and Jeff going over this weekend's fab.